Radhe Radhe Sandhya, Radhe Radhe Neeta ji, Radhe Radhe Sam ji. We have 240 more seconds, so you're welcome to have an informal conversation if you want to have or discuss anything.
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji.
Radhe Radhe Neeta ji.
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji.
Radhe Radhe Sandhya, how are you?
I'm okay. How about you?
Good. So today we are going to complete our bhavs and then we'll get back to Bhagavad Gita shlokas. Radhe Radhe Ashish ji, how are you doing? Radhe Radhe Sam ji, how are you doing?
Somehow we got used to this class, so this is my favorite time in this
Radhe.
particular day. This is my favorite time, favorite hour, I can say.
That's good to know. That's my favorite hour of the day as well, if you ask me honestly.
Yeah.
Mine is becoming unfavorable because I'm in Palo Alto and it's 7 o'clock here.
Okay.
Normally, for the next 1.5 months, I'll be here kind of, but that's okay. That's my part of the job.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
I came to my son.
Okay. So from March, around 18th or 8th, it's going to become 1 hour even earlier, more early.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm looking forward to that. That helps actually a lot of people back in India as well.
Yeah, India, it makes difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference because right now it coincides with office hours and it becomes a little difficult. So
March 13th,
Oh,
daylight saving.
March
Okay.
13th. Okay. All right. Radhe Radhe Rahul ji, Shyam ji. Shyam ji is our co-host for the evening.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Shyam ji, I like your Ocean 11 look. Okay, we'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. Yes, please go ahead. You're saying something?
So far, only 14 persons are there. Maybe they are enjoying the restaurant on Valentine's Day.
I don't know. Yeah, today we didn't have the previous session. So hopefully more participants will be able to join by the time we start.
Yeah. Just now I was in the other session, like 7 mindset. There were
Okay.
139 persons there.
Okay.
I just jumped from there to here. That is the 800 number and ours is the 831 ending, whatever the link number is there. That is 139.
Yeah, we have close to 80, 90, most of the participants. So by the time we get to the discussion, usually have that number of participants come over.
Yeah, many of them will come down.
All right, 9 o'clock. We still have a minute. So we'll give about a minute before we get started with our opening prayers. So is it getting hot in Delhi, Shyamji, already?
Not yet, but still pleasant mornings and evenings. Days are warmer, around 12 to 5 types, but it's still pleasant.
Okay. I hope things are getting back to normal now. At least people have started moving on.
India is normal, Delhi is normal. There is no corona now in our minds. We are free for all. Let's see how we react next 2 months because all is open now. Schools, colleges, universities. So it's a bit scary, but let's see how it goes.
No, I think it's not as bad as it was before the vaccination stuff. So hopefully things will get back to normal soon.
Yeah. We all hope so. It will be better now.
Yep. All right. I think we can get started with our opening prayers. It's 9 o'clock. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. We'll get started with our opening prayers. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it's clear. Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, let's get started then. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your day. Had a great day. Today we'll continue on the discussion that we are having on 5 bhavs. Yesterday we discussed the concept of love a little bit in detail. And today we are going to introduce the 5th bhav, the sweetest of all the bhavs, through which we can build a relationship with God. So we will get into a little bit of a deeper philosophy around the Madhurya Bhav, and also what does it mean for us? Okay, end of the day, that's all that is good. Once we have made our point, what does it mean for me? We'll discuss that as well. So today I have picked up another shloka from Bhagavad Gita, and this shloka talks about, we'll see the context. You'll get it why we have introduced it. It is relevant to the topic that we are going to discuss, and more specifically around the cause and effect relationship around what we think about and what we attach our mind to. So it's a very interesting concept, and let's get started then. So I'm going to recite this shloka, and if you feel confident enough, please feel free to raise your hands. And if you're lucky enough, then Shyamji is going to pick you today. Okay, so your fate is in Shyamji's hands today. So let me get started. I'll recite this verse and then you're welcome to follow. Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitri vrataha bhutani yanti bhutejya yanti madhyajinopi ma. All right. Do we have any volunteers?
Yes, Sitaji, we have some already.
Sure. Let's pick up.
Naji, please go ahead. Naji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Yanti devavrata devan pitrunyanti pitravrataha bhutani yanti bhutejyaha yanti madhyajinopi mam.
Very nice, Vandanaji. Looks like you're just waiting for this shloka today.
Thank you.
Very fluent, very nice. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have anybody else?
Ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
So, Yanti devavrata devan pitrinyanti pitrivrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhya jinopi mam. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice, Ashutoshi. Radhe Radhe. Yes.
Rupaji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Rupaji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe everyone. Yeah, Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe Radhe.
Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitrivrata bhutani yanti bhutejya yanti madhyojinopi mam.
Very nice, Rupaji. There are no more trick shlokas anymore. No matter what we do, we are all able to recite it, which is wonderful. All right, let's take a few more hands and then we'll get started.
Samji, Radhe Radhe.
Hari Radhe Radhe. Yanti Deva Vrata Devam Pitrin Yanti Pitri Varta Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Matya Jinopi Mam.
Very nice. Samji, Radhe Radhe. All right, maybe we can pick up 2 or 3 more. And let's give preference to those who have turned their videos on, like we said. So let's do that. We have a lot of content to cover. So let's see how many hands we can take. Maybe 2 or 3 more.
Dineshji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Dineshji.
Yanti Devavrata Devan Pitrunyanti Pitrvrataha Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Madhyajinopi Mam. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. All right, we can take maybe a few more.
Lakshmi ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Lakshmi.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe Radhe.
Yanti Deva Vrata Devan Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrataha Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Madhya Jinopi Mam.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Lakshmi ji. Okay, we'll take 2 more and then we'll get started. And
Radhe Nida ji.
Radhe
Nida ji,
Radhe.
Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Nida ji.
Yanti Devrata Devan Pitri Yanti Pitrivrata Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Madhya Jino Api Mam.
Very nice. Thank you. 1 more and then we'll get started.
Radhe
Ragi
Radhe.
ji, Radhe.
Radhe.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Yanti Devavrata Devan Pitri Yanti Pitrvrata Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Madhya Jinopi Mam.
Very nice. Thank you very much. So let's get started. If you didn't get a chance, we'll next time you can take that. We have a bit of a content to cover, so we can get started now. So this one, if you're wondering why did we pick this up, we've been discussing all the bhavs starting with 4.3 because Sakhya Bhav was introduced and we introduced the remaining bhavs as well, discuss those in detail. And today we are going to talk about the Madhurya Bhav, which is the sweetest of all the bhavs. However, this shloka is important because God is saying that whatever you worship, right? He's saying worshippers of the celestial gods take birth amongst the celestial gods. Worshippers of the ancestors go to the ancestors. Worshippers of ghosts take birth amongst such beings. And my devotees come to me alone. Okay, he's very clearly saying that. So if you worship devatas, you're fascinated by them, it is a very temporary stop there. They are also jivatmas, by the way. They're just like posts, like Prime Minister has posts. So devatas are also ancestors. If you are too fond of your ancestors, you go to them only wherever they are. And if you worship ghosts like tantrics and all do, then you go into ghost yoni. So depending upon where you attach your mind to, that's what you end up getting. So God being an indulgent father is a double-edged sword. He's not going to stop you. So whatever you worship, wherever you attach your mind to, so be it. He says, be my guest. And then he says, and my devotees come to me alone. Now let's get into deeper. Who do you worship, first of all? Where your attachment is, what you think, what you attach value to in life. And where is your attachment? One whom you love. And who do you love? Where you think my happiness lies. They are all interconnected concepts. Your attachment is also driven by our, the value system and all that stuff. The point here being, end of the day, we'll end up worshipping based on where we think is going to fulfill our interest. And we are actually having a fascination towards that thing as well, right? So anyway, hold on to that thought. We'll come back to that. Now, true love, we spoke about this concept yesterday, that there are 3 things actually. First is lust, Second one is business, which is where most of the world operates. It's 1 and 2, that's where the world operates. Majority in 2, and some part of the population is all about exploitation as well, right? So that goes into the first category. And the third one is love, prem. That is what we have been discussing. That is not possible in this world. And even if it is possible to some extent, there is a flip side to it. And what is that flip side is what we are going to talk about today. But before that, let's get into the topic of our discussion today that we have been waiting to. Today is the D-Day, where we have been talking about all the bhavs, and finally the climax has come, right? We started with Shant Bhav, and then we introduced Dasya Bhav, and then we went to our Sakha Bhav, and then the Vatsalya Bhav, and finally Madhurya Bhav is here. That is what we are going to talk about today, which is the sweetest Bhav. And this is how we have been building the Bhav and intimacy graph. And today, the Madhurya Bhav, the topmost Bhav, is what we are going to talk about. And we saw that they are both directly proportional. Intimacy and Bhav are, as the distance starts shrinking between the devotee and the God, the intimacy and Bhav automatically start increasing. So let's get started with Madhurya Bhav today. You need to fasten your seat belts, because if it gets a little deep into philosophy, feel free to stop me. But then it's just a primer, I would say, on Madhurya Bhav. We will not really get into the depths of it. Maybe we will do that when we get into bhakti and some of those concepts. But today it's more of an introduction, okay, just so that you are able to appreciate that when it is said that bhakti ki purnima nahi hoti, right? It never ends. So the possibilities of bliss, even within Madhurya Bhav. So we are talking about the top bhav with God. And within that also, there are a lot of gradations. There are a lot of categories. So let's get into that. It's very, very, very fascinating, beautiful topic. So we spoke about this concept yesterday. We looked at that shloka, that if we look at God, the way God is in his whole glory and magnificence, then we will not be able to build a relationship. We will always think how grand God is and how insignificant I am. There is absolutely no match. Right? That kind of a feeling would come if we actually think of God along with his Aishwarya Shaktis. So that's why God has given us these 5 relationships which are acceptable in devotion. And like I said, if we do that, then if we will think I am an ordinary being, God is all powerful, how can I love him? So we need some kind of a basis to love him, where we can see them, there is a way to relate to them. It's just like you say, right? You fall in love with people who you think are like you, or there is a basis for some kind of a relationship. They say girl next door or boy next door. Why? Because you are able to relate to them easily. On the other hand, if you think about some celebrity, you'll think, no, that's beyond my reach. So God is the ultimate celebrity here, right? But then he has made it very easy for us and made himself very accessible to us. And this will create fear in your relationship, and that's not what God wants. Now the zenith is basically the peak, pinnacle, or the topmost, or the epitome bhav is the Mahabhav in bhakti. So it transforms into Maha. Maha means grand, and Bhav we've been talking about, right? The quality for devotion. And it is like that sun, which is beneficial in 2 ways. What are those 2 things? It removes the darkness and bathes everyone within its bright rays. Now, one should understand this thing, right? When we are talking about these bhavs, Gyan and Vairagya. In Bhagavatam, the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it is said, Gyan and Vairagya, they are the son of bhakti. Son of bhakti means when you do bhakti, the Gyan and Vairagya would automatically come. So that removal of darkness or illumination of our intellect is going to happen de facto, automatically. You don't even have to acquire knowledge. So in bhakti, knowledge is just a byproduct of it. Vairagya is just a byproduct of it, because Gyan and Vairagya are the sons of Bhakti Devi. So in Mahabhav, in fact, in all of these bhavs, Gyan is already there. So what a Gyani claims as part of their, when they attain moksha, that perfect knowledge, people who have perfected their devotion automatically have that. They are already illumined souls. So even though they might be deeply in love, showing those emotions like Gopi, but the knowledge is always there. It's not that they have lost knowledge. That ignorance is not there. That is already, they've gotten the perfect knowledge of God. Now, so this heightened state is called Mahabhav, and it actually manifests in the rarest of devotees. And how does it manifest? Through grace of God. It's not something that you pay a price and say, okay, can you give me Mahabhav now? It will not happen like that. You cannot purchase Mahabhav. It is God's grace that you get. So God holds the trump card for this. And God only knows when to bestow it to a Jivatma based on how much purity and selflessness they have acquired. And it uproots the darkness of desire, the self-happiness, and fills the heart with ever-growing pratikshan vardhamanam, right? Yesterday Rahul was talking about, it keeps on increasing. That feeling is like, it's like there was a painter who tried to paint God. So God actually manifested in front of him, and he said, okay, just hold on, I'm going to paint you. And he started sketching. He was an outstanding painter, right? If he sees somebody, he'll simply go and sketch them. So he saw God and then he sketched them. But then he looked back at God. He said, no, by the way, I got it wrong. It's a little different, even more sweeter. And then he made something. Then he looked back at, no, it's even more. So what it is, Prati Kshan Vardhamanam. You cannot capture it. You cannot say now this is the sweetest one could ever feel. The ultimate bliss, we'll get into that. What is the ultimate bliss? And can we even get there or not? We'll get into that. But the point here is it's ever increasing, ever fresh. Material thing, it gets stale after a while. You like a movie, you like a song, you like to meet somebody. After a while, you are like, all right, you start losing interest. And third and fourth time, if somebody asks you to watch the same movie that you were really craving for, you'll say, thank you very much. Okay, that's the last thing I want to watch. Even when we hug somebody, we've been waiting to meet that person. After a while, you'll say, okay, enough of it now, give me some space. So in world, things get stale. It gives us a law of diminishing return in economics, like they say that, but not in the case of divine love when we are talking about. Let's move on. Now, Madhurya Bhav, fifth one, where God is worshipped as soul beloved. We're talking about love, and the soulmate, in this case, you love God like the way we know love, right? What does it entail? So this is the most intimate of all the relationships, and devotee enjoys all privileges and have complete authority over Lord Krishna. Just imagine, you have complete authority over God, who's the creator of this universe, and he's willing to dance to your tunes when you reach that stage of perfection. God is your slave. Very mind-boggling concept. And that selfless love that made the supreme Brahman, Krishna, which is permeating this entire universe, every atom of this universe. And he would forget his godliness and become their eternal servitor. When Lord Krishna left Vrindavan, by the way, he left Vrindavan at the age of 11 years, 52 days. That's when he left Vrindavan. And we went there to Mathura, and when he was ruling there, he sent Uddhav once. We'll not get too detail into that, maybe in one of those sessions. He sent Uddhav to meet gopis and Mother Yashoda as well. And one of the messages for Mother Yashoda was that I'm getting all the opulence, and everybody says Dwarkadhish ki jai ho, but nobody is there to scold me like you would scold me when I'll not drink my milk. Okay, and that is what I miss. So even God is the only thing that can enslave God is love. That is the selfless love of a pure heart. That is what these souls had perfected to actually make God dance to his tunes. Big rishis, munis, tapasvis, they are not able to tame God. God does not care to enter their samadhis even after thousands of years. But when Yashoda Maiya comes, he is actually trembling with fear. He is willing to get enslaved by gopis when they make him dance to their tunes. on that buttermilk that he's begging them for. So that is the power of love. Now in this case, since we are talking Madhurya Bhav, now in this case, like I said, it is a most intimate relationship, and this bhav basically encapsulates all the other bhavs as well. Even in the world, right? When you talk about your spouse, you confide in them, you take advice from them as well, and you can have an attitude of servitude as well, as a friend as well. So all the bhavs are automatically covered in this bhav. In addition to that, there is a bhav of surrender that is added, plus all the bhavs that we have spoken about, plus the bhav of surrender, it gets added. Like Maharaj Ji has explained in Radha Govind Geet, माधुर्य में है चारों, गोविंद राधे पांचवा है आत्म समर्पण बता दे. So all four that we have spoken about, starting with Shant Bhav, then Dasya Bhav, then Sakha Bhav, Vatsalya Bhav, all four are there. You can always step back if you need to. You can actually cover all the bhavs in this. Plus the Atma Samarpan is the addition in that bhav. So what is this? Let's look at it a little more. So this Mahabhav actually falls in two categories. Now we are into Mahabhav, the topmost bhav that is possible, but there are two categories of it as well. Now you need to really pay attention. It can get a little thing, but let's get into a bit of a philosophy around it as well. The one is called the Rood Mahabhav, and the other one is called Adhirood Mahabhav. Okay. Now the Rood Mahabhav, in this stage of ecstasy, the bliss that you are in, the love, it cannot be concealed or controlled. You cannot, like in case of gopis, you cannot. You feel helpless in that condition. Okay, it is a good way of looking at it, not that somebody's in a pain or a misery. And this stage is so rare that even the chief queens of Lord Krishna, all the chief queens that he ended up marrying and giving them that privilege during his avatar, they also don't get that. We'll see why. And they rise in the utterly pure and hearts of those gopis who are selfless. You should not even a trace of selfishness need to be there. That is where it actually manifests. Now the Adhirood Mahabhav, it gets higher and denser states of love, which are called Adhirood Mahabhav. What happens in this? In this, the love, that unparalleled bliss that we cannot think about. Actually, in this particular state, the pangs of separation manifest simultaneously. So it's like when you meet somebody, you feel the bliss of meeting somebody, the union with somebody. But in this state, at the time of union, you feel the pain of pangs of separation simultaneously. So milan mein virah ka ehsaas hona, very deep concept. I mean, at least I'm saying theoretically, I don't know what it means, but theoretically, hopefully you can appreciate it. When you are meeting, even then you are thinking, okay, what will happen, when they'll go away. So that kind of in milan, the virah that manifests simultaneously, that is how deep you are in love with God at that point. So when you are meeting somebody, you're happy, I've met. But in this state, you're feeling virah, even though you're meeting that person. That is how your deep your love is in this state. The story doesn't end here. So Adhirood Mahabhav will get into the further categorization of it as well. We'll not get, I think it will get really too deep. Within that, there is Madan and Mohan. And one of that bhav is only reserved for Ashtamahasakis and one only for Radha Tattva. Jivatma cannot reach there. It is a very, very high level of bliss, and there is no bliss beyond that. But let's continue what we are discussing right now. So within that, let's talk about these three. You have Sadharani Rati, then you have Samanjasya Rati, and then you have Samartha Rati. There are three categories within that bhav that we spoke about. And depending upon the level of selflessness and surrender, so just to simplify this conversation, within Mahabhav, you have these three categories, and these categories are dictated by the level of selflessness and the self-surrender these devotees can actually achieve. There is no limit to surrender and selflessness as well. It's not like a binary 0-1. Now I'm selfish, now I'm selfless. No, there are layers and layers you can actually, take away from your selfishness as well. And these bhavs can only come in those devotees who are completely selfless. Not even lesh matra, not even a trace of selfishness exists in them. They reach up to this level. And Maharaj Ji has explained this as well. He says, Madhur bhav walon ko Govind Radhe bhakti mahabhav bhakti tak pahuncha de. So mahabhav bhakti is their treasured possession. And let's look at these three. What is the difference between these three? So sadhan rati is sadhana rati, 100-0. They worship God or look at him as their beloved for their own sake, for their own pleasure. Okay, that is the sadharani rati aspect of it. For example, Kubja. By the way, Kubja was Shrupanakha in her previous birth. So Lord Ram, she wanted to marry Lord Ram. So if some soul gets attracted towards God, it's a big deal. Not everybody can get attracted towards God. And in that avatar, Lord Ram was Maryada Purushottam. So he said, no, I have to go by certain rules. I will marry only one. Sita Maya, I've already married. Let me, bestow my blessings of, the desire that you have made. And when I'll come as a Krishna avatar, because that was a full God was in full form in that avatar. So anyway, in this one, and it is said that even a selfish devotee of Lord Krishna can attain what a selfless devotee of other deities cannot attain. That is the level of that. So in Kubja's case, he actually, first of all, he turned her into a beautiful lady. She was a hunchback lady who was walking when he went to Mathura. And he said, Sundari, what are you doing? Or something like that, he said. And she thought he's making fun of me. He simply pulled her chin and turned her into a beautiful queen and married her as well, by the way. So that is how he graced her, because she had made a desire and he could not fulfill it in Ram Avatar. So devotees of Lord Krishna, they discard liberation. Mukti is anyway rejected, and they can reach up to Prema Bhakti and not beyond. So if you remember that chart, we will get back to that. They reach up to Prema Bhakti, similar to Shant Bhav. So there is a parallel. Shant Bhav reaches up to Prem Bhakti, and Sadharani Rati also reaches up to the Prema Bhakti. But the different point here being, there is a selfishness because you love God for your own sake. It is called Sakam Bhakti. It is not devoid of desire. It is not completely selfless as yet. The next level comes as Samanjasya Rati, 50-50. All right, I'll care for you as well, but then I have my own bliss in my mind as well. Okay, so this is spiritual vyapar happening. Okay, this is not material what we are talking about. Now, in this case, 50-50, like to queens. And they are proud of the fact that I am his wife. They actually have that feeling. Okay, we are, Lord Krishna we are his queens. A bit of pride is there as well. And then it's a 50-50 thing. Your bliss, my bliss, both will go hand in hand. They can go up to Anurad Bhakti, but not beyond. And the topmost, the gopis, is called Madhusne, which has a very heightened feeling of he's mine, hence I love him. This is the reason, no matter how adverse the situation might be, the fervor of their love never diminishes. So the point here is, we love people, we say we like people, we get along with them. But the true test of love is when there is a reason for you to feel upset or the love to vanish, and still the love does not vanish. That is the true test of love. When you have a reason that you should stop loving this person and still you don't, that is the true test of love, right? A simple acid test, I can tell you that, don't try it out. Okay, it's just a test. I heard it in one of the lectures. I like that analogy. It doesn't mean you're going to try it out. So it's like if a guy, or let's say if they're talking to another girl, right, friendly, smilingly, and the wife, or the other way around, doesn't have to be guy, could be the other way around as well, they don't feel upset, right? Because there is a reason for you to feel upset. That person is mine, and how could he think, but when you're thinking about the other's bliss, then it tat sukh sukhitvam, that concept, those concepts don't apply in material world, by the way. This is a divine concept that we are talking about. It's like when you are thinking about others person's happiness and your happiness lies in their happiness, that is the bhav gopis had for God. Not even a trace of selfishness there. So by the way, when I said Lord Krishna left at the age of 11 years, 52 days for Vrindavan, it was from Vrindavan to Mathura, which was about 12 kilometers away, right? So if somebody walks at 6 kilometers per hour, it was about a 2-hour journey. But neither the gopis went to meet him, nor did he come. He gave them 100 years of vira separation, even though that was just about 12 kilometers away. The gopis also did not travel, because if he chooses to come, because in his happiness lies our happiness. If he has some things to take care of in Dwarka, Mathura, etc., we would let him do that. When he desires, he can come and meet us. So they were willing to take on that pain, not calling him up and saying, hey, we miss you, why don't you come back, and all that stuff like we would do in this world, right? So that was the height of their selflessness, the love that they had towards Lord Krishna. We'll get into the depths of it, but I'm just trying to introduce this concept here today. Now, Brahmaji. Now, who's Brahmaji? The creator of this world, Brahmaji, who has created everything, right? That the Prakriti, the Mahan, the Ahamkar, the Panch Tanmatras, the Panch Mahabhut, all the 5 elements, and then this entire creation. The person who has created this entire creation, obviously, he came through the navel of Lord Vishnu. He's saying, let's see what he's saying. And for that matter, Uddhav, who is the topmost Jnani at the time of Lord Krishna's descension, and his good friend as well. He also had a Sakha Bhav with Lord Krishna. What do they say? Let's look at it. What they say is, we would prefer to be a blade of grass, where gopis walk, because they could not attain the devotion and the privilege which these gopis had, or the selflessness that they had. They said, given a choice, we would like to be a blade of grass, or a bird, or a tree. Brahmaji is saying, make me a tree in Golok. Okay, he's willing to give up his post, because they understand what kind of privilege these gopis had in Braj. Nobody gets that. Shankar, Vishnu, nobody gets that, because attaining that selflessness is the height of purity a Jivatma can have. It's not everybody's cup of tea, so they could appreciate what they have. And it is said that Uddhav, when he met gopis, we'll probably have that in one of our sessions, that dialogue is very, very profound between the topmost Jnani and the topmost devotees. That whole discussion between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, we'll get it into one of our sessions. After hearing that from gopis, and that was Krishna actually wanted to teach him a lesson, because one of his own friend was a topmost Jnani. And if it had continued, then people would have said, Krishna, he could not, his own friend was a Jnani, that why are you teaching us bhakti and all that stuff. So he told Uddhav, why don't you go and tell those gopis that God is formless, Brahman, and why are you wasting your time and all this stuff, bhakti is nothing. And when Uddhav went there and he heard gopis, that whole samvad unfolded, and finally he said, I would rather choose to be a blade of grass where these gopis walk. And it is said that in Golok, he actually chose to become a blade of grass there. Now, it is not boring, as you may think in material world. What fun will you have becoming a grass in Golok? People, I mean, if you get that post, it's a big deal, because that bliss is not ordinary. It's a very, very elevated state. And actually, a lot of rishis, tapasvis, munis who perfect their devotion, they choose to become, part of God's pastime as trees and all the things in Golok. They are not ordinary things. Even a lot of rishi munis, they even the jewels or abhushan that God wears, they are rishi munis actually. That is their seva. It's a very high level state. Anyways, we'll not get into that. So Brahmaji says, I would rather have foot dust of a gopi. And that's what Uddhav stated as well. That burning desire they had after they looked at what gopis, the level of perfection they had achieved in selfless love, and had enslaved God, which nobody else can do, no matter what you do. Now, let's look at it from God's standpoint. What is God saying? He says that he walks behind his devotees. Now, why would he walk behind his devotees? Is that he's worried that they will lose their balance, so he'll have to catch them? No, he's giving a reason for that. Lord says that I walk behind my devotee because the foot dust, it's an honor for me to get their foot dust. I feel purified. of my perfect devotees when they walk. It's like, think of it, if there's a God realized saint and they have actually perfected their devotion, God is walking beside them. He's taken control of their life, of course, when they descend there, but God actually considers it his own privilege and honor to get that foot dust from his devotee. That is the humility of God. And that is the stature at which he holds a devotee. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, we'll get to that shloka. It's not coming to my mind right now. Lord Krishna tells Arjun to state something that as my devotee, declare it boldly. Okay, that my devotee can never have a fall. Why is he asking Arjun to say that? Because he may choose to break his own vow, like he did in the battle of Mahabharat when he lifted the weapon, Chakra, for the sake of his devotee. But once he tells his devotee to say that, he will never let their word down. So that is the importance, he accords to his devotee. It's a very deep concept. So if you perfect devotion in love, that is the topmost prize. You can actually enslave God. And then there's nothing higher than that. Mahabhav, we spoke about the categories. There are different gradations within Mahabhav as well. But for Jivatma to get into a Mahabhav state, and that selfness state is the biggest prize one can have. Within Mahabhav also, there are different categories, and certain one of those are reserved for, like Madhanakya Mahabhav is reserved for Radha, Sri Radha. No soul can reach that state. And it is said in Bhagavatam that even Lord Krishna cannot experience what Radha experienced. That is her stature. Even Lord Krishna cannot experience that. And sometimes just to experience what Radha goes through with regards to the bliss that she gets from me and the pain of separation in those ecstatic states, he descends with the soul of Radha and body of Krishna. That can happen, like in case of Gauranga Mahaprabhu or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it happened. Anyway, those are God's Leelas, too deep of a topic. So let's get into some of the stuff for today now. Now let's look at this guy. Okay, it could be any one of us. Now, there is some thought process going on, and that thought process encompasses thinking about family, friends, that big bungalow or the dream house that they want to buy, and then this pet, which is so cute, right? And the baby, of course, the little babies, and they are so charming. They captivate our hearts. And wife and parents, right? Our mind actually thinks about all these things that we consider or think about, contemplate about throughout our lives. That's the story of our life. Okay, it's not all encompassing, but it typically goes around us, right? Maybe we can put a designation, job, or a CADS as well. Okay, could be any of those things. So these are the things where our mind typically contemplates upon for most part of our life, right? And if we think about it from a scriptural standpoint, what our scriptures tell us, all of these are part of God's mic energy. And mic energy is actually three. It's an energy of God, which will fall into one of these three. Either it will be in tamasic mode, right? Or it will be in rajas. The entire Maya is made up of these three gunas only. Or it will be in sattva at best. It cannot go beyond any other combination, tamas, rajas, or sattva. And if we were to look at from a proportion standpoint, majority is in tamas, in ignorance, leading life just for the sake of enjoyment. Like life is an ice cream, enjoy it before it melts. No clue on why we got a human life or have any kind of an inclination to even explore that. So it's mostly in tamas. Too hung up in worldly things, worldly affairs, what's happening in neighborhood, what that person is doing with those kind of things. So that is all in tamas. The lesser proportion is in rajas and even lesser is in sattva. So point here being they are tainted with gunamai maya. Like Lord Krishna is saying that maya is always tainted with these three gunas. Sattva is better than rajas, you can say that, but then sattva is also something which is mic color only, and at best it can give you meritorious results. Like we spoke about, you can get to celestial abodes if you contemplate or do a lot of sattvic deeds such as helping people, doing charity, and all the noble deeds. But sattva is also binding. Now, on the other hand, if you look at it, you have God, the saints, and the Guru, the God realized Guru, especially if you have. So, on one hand, you have the tainted Gurmai Maya, things that you contemplate upon. And on the other hand, you have Gunatit. Gunatit is beyond these three gunas and all pure. If you go back to the shloka that we introduced at the beginning of today's discussion, God said, whatever you contemplate upon, whatever you desire, is what you will end up achieving. If you do celestial gods, if you do world, whatever you do, that is what you'll end up achieving. So the question here is, what does it mean for us? Now we're talking about thinking about people, having attachments, love with people around us. What does it mean for us from a spiritual journey standpoint? Where will it lead us based on the shloka that we spoke about? Let's have that quick discussion around it and see what you have to say. And then the other part of it is when we talk about the Madhurya Bhav, when you attach your mind to something and you fall in love with somebody, you end up getting the result of that person only. So let's say you are in love with your pet, or let's say you're in love with somebody in your family, relative, whoever that is. Now you will have to follow them alongside their journey as a tail. That's essentially what it means, what we spoke about in our today's shloka. You'll have to follow them because your attachment, your asakti is there, and that is what you will end up getting. So what does it mean for us actually? What do we need to do? All that is fine. We have made the point today, Madhurya Bhav, attaching our mind in different ways. But end of the day, if we come back from a practical standpoint, what does it translate for us as a day-to-day practice so that we are getting closer to what we should actually be thinking and doing about, as opposed to continuing with the way that we do. So let's open it up and hear from participants. Any questions? Happy to answer those as well. And share again. So by the way, let me go to an extent of saying that, that's a shortcut to God realization. If you fall in love with somebody who's God realized and you're obliged to follow them like a tail, it's actually you're doing yourself a big favor there. But if you've fallen in love with somebody in material world and God forbid they end up becoming a monkey or a donkey in the next life, then we know what can happen. So let's hear from participants around this concept that we introduced, and even otherwise the bhavs that we have spoken about. Any questions on the Madhurya Bhav or otherwise? Yes, one hand I can see raised already.
Radhe Radhe, Sandhya ji.
Yes, Sandhya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. I had this doubt. Like you said that I think that was the highest possible state in which you will also experience viraha ka dukh.
It's a bliss actually. In Vara, it's not like the pangs of separation that we feel in material world where we are feeling misery. Actually, it is said that the vira is even more blissful, intoxicating than in the Bhagavatam. When you get into the depths of love and bhakti, they say it's not an ordinary thing. So it's even more powerful because internally they are always united. Internally they are always united, and it's just to multiply the ras God does those leelas. That is why he gave them 100 years of separation, just so that feeling keeps on intensifying and they start feeling the higher and higher level of bliss. So God does those leelas to amplify their bliss. So it's not like he has taken away the bliss. They're still in an ecstatic state, but at a different level altogether. Internally, they're always united.
Okay. And आपने एक जगह बोला था कि it's difficult to get attracted towards God. It's not an easy thing. Why so?
It needs a bit of a purity around that, because we have seen God in a lot of lifetimes, and we have thought of him as a competent boy and nothing more than that. So if we have sanskars and a level of purity, then we'll get attracted towards God, because it takes some purity. It's like not every metal can get attracted towards a magnet. Depending upon how much ferrous you have, you'll get attracted towards the magnet. So it takes some purity to do that. Kubja, and they must have had some sanskars to get attracted towards God and have those kind of sentiments that I want to marry this person, with really intense desire around that. So yes, if he can get attracted towards God in one of his, nothing like it, but it would need some purity for us to actually do that. And if for whatever reason we do that, we happen to see God and fall in love with him, that's it. We have hit a jackpot. Hopefully that answered your question. Yes.
Radhe
Radhe.
Usha ji, can you hear me?
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji, Radhe Radhe Shyam ji.
Radhe Radhe.
So the question that I had is that in the picture that you showed where Krishna is with the gopis, now all these gopis are in the female body form. Now when we are actually asking, I mean, all the scriptures say that you are the soul and not the body. Now, why do we see only souls with the female bodies in those kind of pictures?
So yes, when God takes avatar, actually technically everybody is a female. There's only one Param Purush. Okay, if you ask me honestly. And yes, that's how God actually gives the divine love as well. We are all actually, if you think about it, there is only one Param Purush. So in order to experience the bliss that gopis got, Shiv Bhagwan came in as a Shivangi Gopi, Gopeshwar Maharaj, because only females were allowed in that. Shiv Bhagwan, he wanted, because he worships Lord Krishna as his Aradhya as well. Maharaj, nobody gets that. Okay, only very refined, top class, basically selfless gopis, they get that. Even Yashoda Maiya did not get that. So, but he wanted an entry in Maharaj, and then he actually became Shivangi Gopi because only females were allowed, and that's when he entered. So if you go to Bhagavatam Canto 10, it gets into the depths of bhakti, but then you need to have done your tilling on this topic before you get into those deeper topics, because neither we have the eligibility to talk about it or explain it. These are very deeper concepts. When we get into the depths of bhakti, it will make sense, hopefully. But yeah, it said that Lord Shiva actually also became a gopi just to relish the bliss of Maharaj. That is how high that is, because a Jivatma, there's no better price than that, because God is willing to give love, and love, as we see, is a emotion that drives this entire universe, right? Even material world, we can get intoxicated. It might be infatuation, it may be selfish. That itself can make us move around, right? And so many people, they spoil their lives for the sake of love, writing letters, getting depressed, right? So that is how powerful love can be, even material love. So divine love, one can only have a bhas of it, what God is capable of giving, that too, to the perfected souls, when you have perfected your devotion. And that is operating at a very different level altogether. So it's not like a material love or those kind of things. Those are deeper concepts. And I think in due course of time, as we keep on progressing on this path with God and Guru's grace, those concepts will start clicking in as well. I mean, I won't attempt to start reading stuff which is beyond my comprehension at this point, but at least because we are talking about this theory, I'm introducing some of these concepts. Yes.
Rupa ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Rupa ji.
Radhe Radhe everyone. Actually, I just have one small, doubt or whatever it is. The thing is, actually, when you said that every ornament what Krishna is wearing is also one of the sages or whoever they are willing. So I just wanted to know, I'm very curious to know, what is the Morpunk of? Do you have any story, like any history of it? Because always Krishna wears that Morpunk, and how lucky that person is. Even the flute, I can understand that sometimes he won't, but the Morpunk will be always on his head. So just wanted to know if you know anything about the Morpunk, who is that?
I can ask that Morpunk thing. I'll ask them, yeah, because he tucks even flute. He said Hitrai, the saint. One of the saint is his flute. Okay, so Morpunk, that's a good question. I can check it up or ask.
Yeah. Because flute story, we heard it many times in many stories or books, but never mentioned about the Morpunk. And what is the importance? Because Radha also always carries that Morpunk of Krishna, and she feels him.
I can check it up. Kostumani is the most dearest to him. Kostumani is always close to his heart. In fact, in Bhagavatam, there is a meditation which goes from, it says that your mind is like that jinn, right? It never tires. It is always working. So in order to tire it, go from tip of his nail all the way up to the morpunk, top tip of that, and then down and up and down and up. Do your Rup Dhyan, and then your mind will come under control. That is a Rup Dhyan meditation, and it's mentioned. But yes, it's a good question. I'll probably check it up. I'm not aware of that. If somebody knows, you can please answer that.
I have a video of this more monkey. I'll just share the group today.
Sure.
I saw it last week only, so it has some relevance.
Yeah.
But how good it is or something, I don't know. I'll share today.
Sure.
Yeah. Radhe Radhe, Kedarji.
Radhe Radhe, Kedarji.
Kedarji.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe, Nitinji. I was recently reading a book on Rup Dhyan meditation from Maharaji. And towards the end, initially he talks about why it's so important and gives you reference to a lot of our granthas and all that. But at the end, he kind of suggests that we should imagine ourselves to be a 16-year-old girl dressed nicely and then do the Rup Dhyan of Krishna.
Those are advanced concepts for sure. And if you ask, it's very difficult to do that because we have this conception of our body, male and so and so. Those are very advanced concepts. If we could do that, it is said you make Deh Bhav. You just imagine yourself, because I'm not there yet, so I don't even have the eligibility to talk about it. Maybe some advanced sadhaks can talk about that. But yes, eventually you have to, if you have to perfect and progress in that, you have to reach that stage. But I think it's a step-by-step process, and for some it might come naturally because of their past sanskars and the meditation that they have already perfected. But end of the day, if we want the top price, that is the way to go. Yeah, it's just a matter, and then but then there are different other levels as well. So we first have to settle down with the bhav that comes naturally to us, but then our scriptures tell us the topmost price that the soul can get. If you are brave enough, if you have that and you are willing to work towards it, go for it. It's just giving us all the options around it.
In the same way, though, I wonder in all these bhavs, how come there isn't one parental bhav? Because we consider
Vatsalya bhav is there, right? Parental bhav is there. Vatsalya bhav, you can treat God like your kid. Like
How about treating God like our father and mother?
Yes, Vatsalya means both.
Both ways?
Bidirectional. See, God, it's not like the worldly thing. If you think about child, you cannot, it's both ways. You can make him old, you can make him young, you can make him baby, you can make him whatever. So it's both ways. You can consider him as your father as well. That's perfectly okay.
Kumarji, Radhe Radhe. And one request, if you please put cameras on, please, while we speak, while we talk. Just a request, if possible.
Thank you, Shyamji, for the request. And while everybody is there, I just want to remind you one more thing. Yesterday, I spoke about the Shloka classes, Meenuji starting. So if you are interested, please write in the attendance tracker, especially if you have some time preference or something that may not work for you. Provide that information. I'll pass it on to her. So yes.
Kumarji.
Yes, Kumarji, please go ahead.
Kumarji, can you hear me? You can come back later. Kumarji.
Sure,
Padmaji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Padmaji.
Radhe Radhe. Yes, Radhe. So I just have to say a few things, and I'm not God realized or neither I'm there, obviously, but I think the initial step or taking a step is the most important thing, and accepting that knowledge will take time. Many times your heart needs or your soul needs, whatever you want to call it, it needs more time to accept what our mind already knows. And that is how we are conditioned. We know something, we are looking at these lectures, you're presenting all these PowerPoints and all the information is right there, the scriptures are saying this, but there is a lag and there is a time gap between what our mind already knows and our heart needs to accept it. But we have to recognize those boundaries and limitations of why we are not able to go to the next step, and look at those things. And for each individual person, it's going to be a little bit different. What are my boundaries? What are those hindrances? And one thing that I can relate to myself is any kind of relationship, whether it is spiritual relationship or material relationship, when there is fear, love cannot penetrate through that relationship if it is fear. So wherever there is fear, love cannot come in. Something else will come into the picture that we think it's love, but it is not love. Wherever there is fear, love cannot come. So that we really have to believe in that love cannot come. And the same thing with God also. Whenever you're fearing him, out of that fear, you cannot develop that love for him. So that you really have to digest and work with it and see how you can work around that. That is number one thing. And the number two thing is, whether it is materialistic or spiritual, you have to quiet your mind with lots of noise which is happening in our mind and lots of disturbance which happens around the relationships. You have to quiet your mind so that you can relate better to the situation. And the same thing with bhakti also. Quiet your mind so that his love pours on you, so that you can relate to him better. When you quiet your mind, you're able to listen to his music. You're able to listen how he's communicating with you. You're able to listen the pointers that he's giving you. You're able to listen what is that he wants from you. What is your purpose in life? And for that, you have to quiet your mind so that we shift a small baby steps from the picture that you have projected, from the left side to the right side being the God side, right side being focusing on Guru, the right side being focusing on scriptures, right side being focusing on saints. So that transition will happen slowly as we quiet our mind, and we're willing to quiet our own mind to acknowledge our own self-awareness and how the nature is speaking to us, and nature being Maya, of created by God, that how he's communicating with us, not on a verbal basis on a day-to-day, that he's not verbally speaking to us, but he's communicating with us. So those are the three things that we have to at least put that effort to say, you know what, it takes time for our heart to acknowledge. And then also the connections that the nature is always constantly talking about, talking to you. You take that step, he will give you the next step. You take the next step, he will give you the next step.
Yep.
That is how I see it.
Very true. I think quieten your mind. That is the key there. There's so much of chatter going on in it, right? All the times that we lose touch with our reality and keep building layers and layers on top of it. Great point. I think self-awareness and then really reflecting on where we are heading, that goes a long way in taking giant strides towards what we need to be doing from a spiritual standpoint. Beautiful point, Padmaji. Thank you very much. Radhe Radhe.
Can we give notice to people whose cameras are on, or shall we go serial wise?
Yeah, let's go the camera whose camera is on priority to those. I'd see Tania ji, Sunit ji. Sunit ji is clapping as well. So yeah, let's give them priority.
Tania ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Tania ji.
Radhe Radhe, Nitin ji. Radhe Radhe, everyone. So I had a question. When you mentioned Tat Sukh Sukhitvam is a divine concept.
Yep.
It's a divine concept, and that's also our goal, right? Getting true love, which seems to be the definition. Tat Sukh Sukhitvam is divine love. It's true love. If it's all divine, then how can we as material people have a conceptualize or even aim for true love with this definition?
Yeah, I think it's a dichotomy basically from that standpoint. Very true. Because in world, we say we have to use our buddhi, right? We have to apply our intellect and man in God. So how do we do? I mean, do we start loving everybody around us and then end up becoming? It's a pretty interesting concept for sure. As I understand it, if you ask me, as part of your sadhan bhakti, you work on your, the things which bring in positivity, helpful attitude, not thinking negative about others, and being compassionate. And then God starts supplementing it and directing you so that, the combination of both takes you to the next step. But from a actual standpoint, when you become a sadhak, would you have anyway, one of the symptoms should be that you should not feel hatred, anger, all those negative emotions anyways, and you approach everything with a with compassion. So if you're upset with somebody and you're approaching it with compassion, you would help them overcome their frailty or where they are actually failing with you, as opposed to okay, tit for tat. So that mindset will start coming in, and I think when we start consciously putting effort towards that kind of an attitude, I think God probably helps on that path as well. But yeah, it's a big dichotomy that we have to deal with, because how will we operate effectively in this world? I struggle with that as well. Where do you draw the line? But then if your heart starts becoming clear, purer, I think you'll get help, and maybe the things will start aligning around you as well. I don't know. We'll have to experiment and see how it progresses, and maybe put together some cases where how is it supposed to work, right? So, but yeah, it's a very interesting question, very practical question around that. But tat sukh sukhitvam is not something we can do for worldly people. Okay, we can strive to get better at that, giving them a benefit of doubt that they are going to make mistakes, but then we have to increase our tolerance around this thing and capability to handle that. But this concept, man concept, is all reserved for God, where you seek his happiness and have a prasad buddhi around his decisions as well. We don't complain, why did it happen to me? Or you did something wrong to me. Or I used to worship or do my puja and still it happened to me. That thing should go away from our mind. Simple acceptance with God. But great question, Tanyaji. I think we'll probably bring in some situations to see how does it apply to this particular situation when we talk about tat sukh sukhitam. Can we really do that, or how do we navigate that? I don't have an answer for that. Maybe somebody else can. All right.
Swatiji, thank you so much for camera. Radhe Radhe.
Yes. Let's take
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Am I audible?
Yes, Swatiji.
Yeah. And Radhe Radhe to everybody. I have just want to add one point. Just now somebody asked about that all are ladies, only Krishna is the Purush, So Maharajji, Kripalu Maharajji said that his one name is Jagpati. So he is the Pati of all the souls. So it may be boy, girl, or God, like anyone. So he is that wife of, we are all wife of the only Krishna being the Purush. And this is the Maika, this world and this all Maya is Maika, and Sasural is the Golok. So one day we all have to reach there, to leave this world and go there. So that's why it's like he has been given the name Jagpati. I just wanted to add this.
Oh, very nice, Swatiji. Did you say Maika or Mayaka? But anyways,
Maika. Girls' house is Maika.
I got that point.
And
yeah.
this is Sasural. Yeah, it's like.
I know, that's why I say for ladies, especially who are born as ladies in this birth, it's a relatively easy. Right? Those feelings can come naturally towards looking at Krishna. He's anyway so what do you call that? He's called Ras Sindhu. But then yes, when you start arming yourself with knowledge, then we have to increase that path for him for sure. At least start taking some steps towards it. Okay, we can take a few more hands. Sunit ji is on. Radhe Radhe.
Yes, Radhe Radhe Nitinji. Actually, yesterday, Nitinji, I got some call. I will try to relate with today's topic. So I'll try my best. You'll pardon me if I do some mistake. Yesterday I got a call from a life coach. She said, do you want more money? You want bigger car? You want bigger house? So I then immediately thought, I just kept her phone down. And then I was thinking, we all have roti, kapda and makan. Still we people stay in this loop. We want bigger home, bigger car, bigger this. So after this, then I was in the morning, I was just thinking, Sunit, you have everything now. Now there must be I have raised two beautiful daughters. Now they are independent. So there must be some reason now for your life. Like I am attending these sessions. So the idea immediately struck me, Sunit, why don't you write some book on your own life? Maybe if it touched even a single person on this whole planet, your life will be meaningful. So these thoughts are coming just because of I am attending these sessions. Radhe Radhe.
No, this is great. Actually, you are able to think, especially in those moments which is great actually. Sometimes we get into the mode, right? We go with the momentum, and that knowledge slips away. The fact that you're able to bring in, even in these small instances, actually it's a big step. It doesn't happen so easily. And I see you pick up an example from your day-to-day life and try to map it back to what we discuss or learn, which is great. This is the whole idea. Nididhyasan aspect of it, right? Where you have contemplated and try to practice it as well. And then when we take one step, God takes 10, right? You'll be surprised to see you'll start getting better at a lot of these things. That is the power of, this Bhagavad Gita message. And when we try to really work on ourselves, God is more than happy to help us on this path, because that is the whole objective of this creation. Beautiful point. Please post the attendance tracker if you're not, and fill it out. Feedback tracker, like I said, for Minuji's session, if you have some time preferences, please do call it out and provide your feedback anyway for the session as well. Yes, we can take maybe a couple more hands.
We have 2 more hands. This is why. Can you take those?
Sure.
We have 2 more hands. Kumarji, Radhe Radhe. Kumarji.
It's Kumarji. Is your audio fixed now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Kumar.
yes.
Let me move to a place which is more silent.
No worries.
Thanks. Sorry, I was cutting some vegetables for tomorrow's lunch. That's why I couldn't take the call earlier. Or
You were making, as I see, you were making some deposits, so that's good.
Okay, so for me, like my experience is that whenever I think God has forced me to look at Him, not away from Him, by giving me more troubles, right, in life. And I didn't understand that initially, right? I kept asking God, why me? Why me? And then I found that, the more and more troubles came, I had to turn towards God. And it's like very funny, this one. Whenever I was thinking I was doing good, I didn't really, pray or do much. Though I have this slight spirituals, this one in me and all that stuff, I was not doing much. So, but whenever God thinks that I'm not doing well enough towards Him, He gives me more troubles. So
seem to be favorite of God for sure, Kumarji.
Yeah. And so
what
I do is in a way it has become very useful, because I'm able to face the world situations much better. And whenever God gives me this trouble, like one of my colleagues is saying, Kumar, you need to look at this. Why is this guy saying this? And usually I used to take sides before, right? Now I'm like, okay, I say, okay, God, I know I'm not thinking about you, so you're giving me this trouble. So I talk to God and say, sorry, God. Yeah, first, again, I will do the right thing. I'll not take sides here. And I will kind of try to deal with this. And you give me the strength to do this. Right?
Yep.
And so it has become very, very, very beneficial that way. I'm able to deal with problems much better. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm not getting troubles, but whenever troubles come, I'm able to look at it in that mindset.
Wonderful. Right. So biggest tests are reserved for the best students anyways, right? So it is said our concept of God's kripa or mercy is sukh sampatti ghar aave kasht mite tanka, right? That's what we say. So we think when God bestows His grace and mercy on us, we will get all the material things. Actually, again, it's a paradigm shift. When God graces, He starts snatching away the world from us. Okay, but then He'll give you the test that you are capable of taking, not the test that will break you completely. That is the true grace of God, because we are so hung up playing this game, we don't want to get out of it. And because of which we don't realize our potential, and we are not actually getting what we are entitled for. So when He truly graces, He'll start giving you, when He wants to give you strength, He gives you obstacles to climb. And only when you do that, you will come out better and stronger out of it. But this perspective, having that, is a beautiful one. Not many can actually see it that way. They think, why not me? Instead of saying, why not me, they say, why me? And then that's where the their thought process stops, and a lot of people end up becoming negative around this thing as well, which is not the right way of looking at it. Great reflection. Thank you for sharing that, Kumarji. And in fact, we did this exercise sometime in the past where I said, all of you can actually try it at home. Just plot 4 or 5 points in your life which has given you a lot of misery or hardship. And if you actually plot that, at the different age group, whatever age it happened at, you would realize that those points were inflection point in your life where you have come out better and stronger. It actually has gone a long way in defining who you are today. And if you actually look at the successes or the happiness part of it, probably they haven't added any depth to your life. It's only through those hardships, what you have come out of would really define who you are today. A lot of learning and depth you would have accrued from those experiences. So if you reflect on it, actually, those are the things which add value to our life, not the cruise control, happy, hunky-dory life. Steve Jobs said, right, the best thing that happened to him was when he got fired from his own company. That, fueled the creativity in him, and he ended up doing a lot of good things even after that. So if you do want to do that exercise, you can do it, and you'll be surprised to see that's exactly how it's going to be. All right, maybe a couple more. Shamji, real quick, we can take, I think we are 10 minutes over.
We can take that, not the issue.
All right.
Please
post the feedback tracker and any announcements we had. We have holy event coming up, and I would say do attend our weekly satsangs. They're a great way to deepen this bhav and bhakti bhavs that we're talking about. They're all available online. Sunday satsangs, we do that. So great opportunity actually to continue deepening your devotion as we continue contemplating on the. Okay, we can take a couple of more hands real quick.
Seema ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Seema ji.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Let me see what I was going to say and almost forgot. But I think when I do Rupa Dhyan, with imagination, I'm able to reach the Vrindavan at Sri Krishna's feet and be there. I think someone said, and that's what I was imagining. As a 16-year-old.
Bhav Deh, yeah.
What did you say? Bhav?
Bhav Deh, they call it, right? Bhav Deh you make, and then you, 16-year-old you go. Very nice. That's nice.
Yeah. And then in a spirit body, free of this material body, which is a burden. So then be God's assistant in that capacity, with whatever needs to be done, and receiving and giving that soul to soul love is that I think this Param Purush is, and he's Patit for everyone. That's probably because of souls, and it has nothing to do with
it's not the material Pati. Those concepts don't apply. So whenever we think about these bhavs, the first thing that will come to our mind is this worldly love and all that stuff. No, they go much deeper than that. As we keep on progressing in our devotion, these concepts will start clicking, but it's not even remotely related to how we consider worldly relationships and love. So it is much deeper than that. In fact, when you come in touch with that, it'll, like you said, right, Ashuru and all that stuff will start happening. That is such a deep feeling. One would fear that, if you experience that, you can't put it in words for sure. So
right. So okay, I'll put some more in the portal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema ji, for sharing that. Yes.
Pallavi ji.
Yes, Radhe Radhe, Pallavi ji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Radhe Nitin ji, Radhe Radhe Shyam ji. Sorry, I'm not able to put the camera on.
No worries.
Nitin ji, I just want to mention such a valuable information, such a beautiful class today, and so much information to process. It will definitely take time. It's not easy concepts to understand also. And for the first time we got introduced, I mean, I'm talking about for myself, and it was amazing. Like I was totally kind of thinking that how these things are even possible,
I know.
So great inputs from all the devotees today. And my one takeaway from today's class is that follow the Guru. because that's what I think at least we can start with, I think.
Wonderful, Pallaviji. See, we are extremely fortunate to have access to this knowledge because of Sri Maharaj Ji. These concepts, you spend your entire life reading the scriptures, you will not be able to grasp those. You'll never be able to get that. And what we are getting, even they say that even Brahaspati and so they also line up to hear this knowledge. It's not an ordinary knowledge, okay? These are very deep concepts. At least if theoretically it's clicking. When I heard it for the first time, I was like, wow, what are they saying? I can't relate to it because I'm not there. But at least theoretically, when you hear about it, it's like, okay, it's so much of depth is there in our scriptures, and it can go to such a big extent. And then God, there's a personal touch you are giving to this whole thing, right? Otherwise, God is like, okay, who's God? Who has seen God? But these are the possibilities. And Bhagavatam Mahapuran is the scripture, like Vedavyas, when he wrote all the scriptures and Bhagavad Gita and everything, he was still having a sense of dissatisfaction until he told his guru Naradji, and Naradji said, you're having that dissatisfaction because you have still not glorified God. But you cannot glorify it until you do bhakti yourself. And then he did bhakti, and then finally he wrote Mahabhagavat Puran. And in the beginning of Mahabhagavat Puran, he says that Arodhyam Puni Puni, that I churned it repeatedly. That what is the essence of our scriptures? Churn. Now Vedavyas is churning, right? Just imagine how intellectual he was. He's written pretty much everything, right? He's churning the scriptures to distill or give us the essence of scriptures. And then he wrote Bhagavad Puran, which is all the nectar of divine love. It flows there in, the God's leelas, pastimes, everything. And then he said, yeah, now my job is done. So that is how deep it goes. Bhagavad Gita doesn't talk about it. It ends at moksha. Bhagavatam goes beyond that, depths of bhakti. But we bring in those concepts because Sri Maharaj Ji has made it accessible to us. And I try to take, as many opportunities as possible to bring in these concepts, with the shlokas that we can possibly discuss it with. So, but yeah, we'll continue to do that. Pallaviji, I know these are not straightforward concepts, but we'll try to churn them more and more as we go along, and hopefully they'll start sticking more deeply in our minds, and we can start putting some of these to practice as well. All right.
We have shall we take them?
Yes,
If
sure.
you say-
Yes, let's quickly do that.
Padmaji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, I just wanted to say, connect it back to what Kumarji was saying, right? When we look upon, as Nitinji was saying, right, we sometimes might forget to think about God. We might sometimes be very overly occupied in what we are doing, but he doesn't stop thinking about you. He's constantly thinking about you. He's constantly testing you. He's constantly looking for areas that we need to grow. So we might not be aware. And we are not even aware that the areas that we need to go, we are not even spending time enough to think about the areas that we need to go. But he's constantly thinking about the areas and the gaps that we have to purify our mind, and he's constantly thinking about those things and giving you those opportunities to where we need to refine ourselves. That is number one thing. And you have to truly believe that, right? Okay, he's constantly thinking about me, and he's giving me all these weakest areas that I need to work on, and he's giving you that opportunity because we are not able to recognize those. So he's going to present an opportunity. He's going to present a situation where he realized that this is where you need to work on. So he's going to give you that opportunity. That is the number one thing. Number two thing is, if I understood in Hindi, sometimes I lose what they might be talking about. If I understood Tanya's question, how to keep ourselves happy and keep everybody happy, I think maybe that was the essence of the question. But if I got
Tatsukitvam was, in your happiness lies my happiness. Okay, so how do you apply that concept materially? So when you see people around, you say in your happiness lies my happiness, then how will you operate effectively? You might be taken for a ride, right? Especially so many different settings that we operate in professionally, otherwise. So she was saying, how do you marry that concept? How do you simulate that, especially if that is the end goal? Because we have to simulate that concept for God. Do we start practicing it with the world? And then how do we handle that contradiction where in the world you cannot operate like that, but in the realm of God, you have to do that? That is what she was asking about. And I think that is the whole objective of this world, where you put your everything for God. When you are simulating that, especially with God, like Karam Yoga is also Tat Sukh Sukhitvam. If you look at the concept of Karam Yoga, God is saying, just have prasad buddhi. Results you don't control. So in your happiness lies my happiness. So if I don't get a favorable result, that's fine. That is Tat Sukh Sukhitvam, if you look at it from a practical standpoint. Also the prasad buddhi, whatever happens in our life, we simply accept it. The moment we complain, why did this happen to me? This only if this had happened, I would have been happy. We have forfeited that opportunity to that tat sukh sukhitvam part of it. So I think those are some of the areas where we can practice it. But yeah, it's a much deeper conversation for sure. All right, great. I know it's 20 minutes over. We took the liberty today. So anything, closing comments, Shyamji, from your side?
Please fill the address tracker. Your feedback, your suggestions, your complaints. That's it. And we have one more hand raised by RTG. Shall we take it, or as you say?
RTG, 1 minute, and then we can I don't want to make it too late for everyone. Real quick, if you can. Sure, we can do that. And then
Radhe, Radhe.
so tomorrow we will continue. I'll pick up a topic, something interesting tomorrow. Before we get into 4.4, that's where we need to resume our journey. Yes, RTG.
Like Nitinji, I do not know whether it comes from Ramayana or from where. Like there is one statement that yash apyash jivan maran
labhani
vidhihat. So even God has taken away our worries, that you don't worry for whatever comes. One more thing that I have experienced, that whatever is the struggle that has pushed us towards the divine love, and then that we can feel the bliss. That is why we all are here.
Very true.
Little bit of it is we all are thinking that yes, all those running after of the things is not as much blissful as calming and soothing is this. So what I experienced is, the moment we long for God, all suddenly, I mean, in some period of time, things go settle down on their own, as if they are attracting us towards the things we were earlier craving for. It is like God is testing that we still want those things, to hang around those things, or we want God's love.
Very true.
Even I think God also keeps on checking us that what truly we want. So the environment in my life has become so conducive, and even whatever I was craving, I have everything is so conducive. More than that I have got, but now I don't want. Like what I want is my association with satsang and God's love.
Thank you, RTG. Great points. Very true. In fact, it is said that what bothers you is the lesson for you. So anything that is troubling you, keeps on repeatedly troubling you, is the lesson for you. Wonderful discussion. We'll continue on this discussion tomorrow as well. I'll pick up something interesting tomorrow, if not 4.4. But yeah, I think we completed bhavs, and we can go really deep as we introduce some more concepts of bhakti in subsequent shlokas. First 6 chapter are Karam Yoga, then Bhakti Yoga, next 6, and then the Gyan Yoga. That is how Bhagavad Gita unfolds. So I'm sure we'll have more of these discussions around these topics as we go along. Thank you again for your wonderful participation. We can do our closing prayers now. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of your evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.